Welcome to the Diverse Minds podcast, where we give you the tips, tools and techniques you need to be a mentally healthy and inclusive leader. Each week, you'll hear about a variety of topics linked to mental health, well-being and diversity that will enhance both your professional practice and personal well-being.
It's Black History Month, one of my favourite months of the year for that matter. For some it brings mixed feelings, as Black history of course extends for more than 1 month, and it should do, and it must be part of all history, as it was, and the deleted and stories and legacies need to be acknowledged. But I'm so delighted that my first guest for the month is Pawlet Brookes. Pawlet Brookes is the CEO and Chief Artistic Director of Serendipity Arts UK. Pawlet has been at the forefront of the development of black arts in the UK for 25 years. She initially worked as marketing manager at Nia Centre Manchester in the 90s, then artistic director of the People Centre in Leicester, and ultimately the chief executive of Rich Mix in London. As founder, CEO and artistic director of Serendipity Arts, Pawlet has pioneered the establishment of an annual dance festival in Leicester since 2011 entitled Let's Dance International Frontiers, and coordinates the very high-profile annual Black History Month here in Leicester and beyond. Pawlet has edited several high-profile publications and books. Her experience includes leadership training, partnership building, artistic assessment, business planning, fundraising, both private and public, and charitable, marketing, audience development, events management, and international programming. Well, I couldn't have more of an esteemed guest, and I'm delighted to welcome the eminent Pawlet Brookes to the show.
Thank you.
So, Pawlet, can you tell our listeners a little bit about Serendipity Arts?
Serendipity is a diversity-led organisation, so the majority of the work focuses on groups that are, considered marginalised in terms of the work that we do. But it's about making that shift where people perceive that it's coming out of community or black arts, that it is community rather than professional. So the work is of the highest calibre. It is a reflection on the communities found within Leicester, but beyond, because by our nature, in terms of diversity, we're international, we're global. So the work that Serendipity does, it's founded in a lot of different levels. In that one, it's not just about showcasing high quality work, but it's about the ability to leave a legacy. So we're really keen that legacy is intertwined with performance and showcasing. So we're doing that as we go along. So it's not one or the other, it's both, because Serendipity is trying to plug that gap where there's those missing voices, those hidden voices. And so we're trying to make sure that not only are we offering something that you can just go for sheer enjoyment and enjoy, but also the bits within our education that we need to give some people a refresher. And so, Serendipity, 9.5 years, coming up to our 10th birthday, and working culturally specifically around BHM, Black History Month, and having a little bit more latitude around LDIF.
Yeah. And I know what I always say to people is that you can never learn enough. And one of the things we talk about in TetraMap, a tool that I'm trained is you can't unlearn, you can only learn more. Yeah. And actually Black History Month is about everyone. Yeah. And I think what you do really reflects that.
I mean, Black History Month this year, it's a bit of a teaser for me with lots of people, because on the front cover, I ask everyone to pick up the brochure, and my first question is, who is it? So it's got the image of a black woman on the front, and I have from Oprah Winfrey to Eartha Kitt in terms of what people have said. But it's Sarah Vaughan. Yeah. And, Sarah Vaughan, one of the greats in terms of, as a singer, but she played here in Leicester at De Montfort Hall in the 60s. Yeah, yeah. And I think it's really a testament to have her on the front cover of the brochure as we focus on our past and how it influences our future. We also had people like Ella Fitzgerald, playing there, Billy Eckstine, some of the greats at De Montfort Hall. And one of the key facts that we found recently around the things that we've been doing and trying to showcase this year as well, in 1934, Paul Robeson started one of his tours at De Montfort Hall. So Black History Month is, yes, as I keep on saying, it's educational whilst being entertainment at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's clear you've got a lot of passion, and everyone who knows you and meets you knows you've got passion for the arts and a passion for, like you said, expressing and giving a platform to those often unheard voices. So what made you decide to start Serendipity Arts?
Well, I've worked for predominantly in cultural diversity or black arts throughout my career within the arts and cultural sector. But, you know, as you work for different organisations, you then have to follow a certain line. And it got to the point where I still felt that we had these unheard voices. So although I was working within diverse organisations, voices were still not being heard. And so it was really, really important to try and, you know, address that in some way, or support that, or to look at that within the work that I was doing. So there's lots of, you know, things in terms of going to other venues and struggling to get there, or the cost of it, and doing things like that, you know, and thinking, well, how can I change this? I went to see a performance at one venue, and for 3 people to go and see this performance, it was like £100. And I thought, well, then how do the communities that it's aimed at access that? And so I then put the same thing on in Leicester a few years later, but made it free. Yeah. So, you know, it's about really giving access, giving a voice, and also recognition. You know, people can see themselves, you know, they can aspire, they can do great things. So I think the thing with what we've been doing over the years in terms of issues around diversity, there's been constantly throughout it missing voices. And to just do, you know, we've only got it 1 month of the year. We can only see, so, you know, Black History Month is the showcase, but it doesn't mean that it stops.
Absolutely.
And so it was about giving, you know, opening up an opportunity for those voices. Really, really important.
And, you know, as a Black leader yourself, what have been your key career learning points from the lens of a Black woman?
The best lessons of the things that go terribly wrong. I'm really sorry. My greatest jobs have been my worst.
Okay.
Whenever you name it, it's happened. It was wrong. You learn so much from that. They say, you know, the wise man learns from the fool. Yeah. And I have to say, in my jobs when I've made an absolute mess, or, you know, the organisation itself has been a sham, that's where I've learned the most. I mean, you really, really do. And I think the biggest thing that lesson that anyone can learn is to listen. Yeah. And we'd be surprised how listening is not a tool of today's youth. It's not something that we do. And I think, you know, when you're not sure, it's to take that quiet breath, count to 10, before you answer. And the answer may be, can you repeat? Because I didn't quite, because you need to listen. So I think listening and things that have gone absolutely wrong, because, you know, you think, well, I'll not do that again. Oh, I've understood this, you know. So yeah, I think of some of my jobs, and, you know, having bullet holes in the window in one job, and, you know, things that used to happen. I think things that didn't go the way that you would like. That's where you learn.
What's made you keep going? So when you've hit these barriers or hurdles or difficulties, how have you framed that differently and gone, I've not failed, I'm learning from it, as opposed to, do you know what, I don't need this anymore, I'm walking away from it?
It goes back to the point you made earlier that you keep learning, because, you know, when I had my daughter, my life changed again, because you change again, because now you've got a different thing and you've got to give back, and you recognise the need to give back, you know, and it's really easy to moan that no one left anything for you. There's no legacy, there's no gatekeepers, there's no this. You know, it's so easy to moan about it, but you've got to say to yourself, well, what is my contribution? What have I contributed? How have I helped? It's easy to say that someone didn't give you something, but what did you give?
Yeah, okay.
And I think that's really important to me, that I could sit here and say that people never did this or they never left that. But maybe there wasn't the opportunity for them to do that. Maybe the infrastructure wasn't there. You know, there's loads of maybes, but you need to be able to sit down and ask yourself, how have I tried? What has been my contribution? You know, I think it's really, really important not to moan. And in terms of legacy, in terms of gatekeepers, in terms of saying, well, it wasn't there for me, what did you do to make that difference? So, you know, serendipity, I didn't realise, Amy told me we've had so many young people go through the doors here, and I hadn't realised that there'd be more than 100 young people go through the door. And that's really good, that you're contributing and helping and nurturing the future,
Yeah.
and it's part of the ethos of the organisation, so it's embedded in what we do. I think that's really, really important. You have to be prepared to give back.
And that's a really interesting point, because I was having a conversation on Facebook with a friend yesterday, and she used to be the NUS Black Students Officer when I was a Student Union Officer, and I said to her, I wish we could go back and I could be in one of your sessions again, and it was 2004, and she said yes, and then we could maybe get more Black MPs if we'd known what we had known. That whole thing around legacy, you've got to keep thinking about it, and you've got to keep thinking before it's too late, and keep doing things.
Yeah, and keeping up to date with the current dialogue, because the things that we did 20 years ago or 30 years ago are not appropriate to do now to get where we need to get to. So we have to find different tools and new ways to continue that fight and that battle. We have to arm ourselves and equip ourselves with the new technology, with the new tools that people are using to get to the next stage, and educating, not just in terms of being able to do English and maths, but educating in terms of knowing your history and having a sense of pride, and filling in that bigger picture. So it's not an either or, it's all, I think, is part of it.
Yeah, definitely. You've kind of touched on that, and we've been talking about it. But for you mentioned it's a showcase, but what is the other most important thing about Black History Month? I
mean, Black History Month, the current exhibition that we're putting on, it starts from 1910 to present day, and it will show the Black intervention of people, particularly in the Midlands, and that it wasn't just that we arrived on the Windrush, that, the Windrush is part of our history, but, it shows those other histories, it shows shared histories as well, and the whitewashing of history. And so it will take people through that. So we're going to have these massive images and with QR codes on it, and when you go on the QR code of that decade, it unearths all these things that people didn't know about, and that, as they will start from 1910 to present day. When we did Lost Legends, when we celebrated 30 years of Black History Month, we did a timeline at the back of the publication which showed a 250-year intervention of Black people nationally, but then we also drilled down to focus specifically on the East Midlands of lives here and what people were doing, as I say, 250 years ago to present day. So it's really, really important, because when you go and look at the history books, there's only certain bits of our history in there. And I'm not saying that they need to take those bits out. I'm just saying it needs to have the right context.
Broaden the context.
And so what we're trying to do is plug those gaps. So we're just continually punctuating that and changing the language. And the other thing that we're doing with it in terms of Black History Month, we're now building the educational packs that sit alongside the exhibitions or the publications, and engaging where possible, not just with schools, but, De Montfort University, other universities, other areas, so we can start to change that dialogue. I mean, we've just, on this one, which will launch in a couple of weeks, we've just produced a film made by a young Black female filmmaker called Jahar, and it's called A Very British Voice, and it's brilliant. Local people telling their stories, both young and old, poets, singers, it's lovely. And it's quite nice because, again, the team and other people who've seen it so far, it makes them reflect on their contribution, or it makes them reflect on their knowledge or history of Black history and say, I hadn't realised that. Or maybe I need to find out a little bit more about that. And I think that's important.
Yeah, and absolutely. And I think in this area, I mean, there have been Black people in Britain since Roman times, and it's not the single story, actually. These are merchants, these are people trading. It's just not a new thing. And I think Black people have always been part of all histories.
And then that's what we're showing, because we're not just showing that we've just come here and we've, been on the buses.
No, absolutely not.
We're showing the richness in terms of contribution, intellectually, culturally, we're showing that greater side that is always missing. And it's actually fascinating, and it's fun. Again, as we approach Black History Month, we're about to launch our digital archive, and so we've been starting to build a digital archive that reflects all the things that I've been talking about. That will be one that works with Black Cultural Archive in London, but really to drill down on things that are happening in the regions, in the Midlands in particular, because again, I think the other stories and hidden voices within that is also missing.
Yeah, absolutely. And so given what you've just said, in your eyes, what do you think is the best way to educate and make everyone understand the importance and significance of Black History Month?
I think that's really difficult because I think it's not one size fits all.
Yeah, okay.
And I think that we can't just say there is one single way that we need to do. I think it's great that we have this annual celebration and that we've got this opportunity to come together and to show the best work, but it is a year-round programme. We do have Black Chat, which is a series of discussions that happen. I think it's every single layer, but I think one of the key things is we need to change our history books and we need to change what's happening in terms of the national curriculum and what we're doing in schools. We need to broaden that. So that's just a baseline that we need to do. But given that, I still think that you can't just say, here you go, this is how we do Black History Month and that this is the way it's going to be. Because, people learn differently as well. But the influences on music or on film, we need to start explaining that. So when we look at our Black British exports to the American market, people need to know that their training was here, that they're representing, Black British voices, rather than thinking, everything that comes out of Hollywood and the film industry has just come and all the training and nurturing's been there. Actually, there's a lot of the best product, so to speak, has come from the UK and beyond. And so, there isn't a straight answer to that. I think the fact that we need to have multiple layers of things happening and they need to be happening simultaneously. So things that are happening in schools, things that are happening in our museums, things that are happening, in our art centres. I think that's going to be the best way to do it. And therefore there's different things that appeal to different people's interests, rather than just saying, this is compulsory and this is what you have to do. And then you learn it by rote because then you've not actually understood anything.
Yeah, and then this whole thing around multiculturalism, blah, 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 the negativity around it.
Yeah.
Any sort of tips for more corporate workplaces? So so I know we've got, employee affinity groups or staff networks, and they do a huge amount of work in all different sorts of workplaces. But I suppose if there's a workplace thinking, we'd like to educate our staff more through the arts. What would you suggest?
We're just about to launch Cultural Diversity and Creative Practice as an online learning course, and to start to also courses when we move into our new space, because I think it's really, really important that we look at some of the issues that people have not necessarily had in the standard education, but actually when they go into the workplace, it's the first thing that hits them.
Yeah.
And so we do need to look at, the shifting landscape around terminology and language and its impact. We do need to understand all the things around cultural policy and cultural theory, and again, where that has an impact from an arts and cultural perspective. We do need to understand about the widening of the term diversity and cultural diversity, because it's ever becoming a bit of elastic, and what that means, and how these things play and fit into government policy, government strategy, and where that fits. We do need to understand that, the issues of things like the SUS laws, of how it's in and out and what it means, so it's SUS laws here, the similar sort of language is used within the States. What do these things mean in terms of cultural policy and planning and working within, and in terms of business, entrepreneurship and diversity? We need to start looking at all of these things and understanding them, because what we're finding is, students say, I want to come and work in the arts, and then you say, well, you've got this policy, and they haven't got a clue.
Yeah, okay.
They haven't got a clue. And it's not the student's fault. They've not been taught anything.
No.
So I'm not blaming the student, but I think it's a whole layer that we need to unpack a little bit further in terms of the education. We're not overly politicized in terms of politics being on the agenda in schools, but you think about some other countries and politically children are very, very aware. We know that we can go and vote when we're 18, but understanding government and politics, not saying what side you sit on, but actually understanding the processes and the principles around government and politics, how decisions are made within Parliament, how that process works. I think we need to, there needs to be some serious step changes of understanding, these structures that would then empower people to act and react, hopefully differently within the workplace, and with each other.
Yeah, and I think SAS laws are really important, actually, because I've got friends who have been stopped at their workplace, very prestigious government body, and asked to show their pass when other people were going through, and surprise, surprise, they were from the Black community. There's still a long way to go. So it might be after, but what are you most looking forward to attending in Black History Month? Any events or anything that you're doing, or maybe it's afterwards?
I love Black Chat. The film programme's brilliant, but this year I'm being a little bit spoilt because we've got Sue Andy coming, and Sue Andy's from my hometown, Manchester, and Sue and I she's a brilliant performer, we used to work together and she was part of the things, so I'm feeling a bit spoiled that I'm having a long time friend come and be part of the programme. I think everyone's going to be slightly privileged. She's absolutely brilliant, so I'm feeling a little bit spoiled within that. The launch is going to be good, wanting to see people's expressions when they unearth a little bit more about Leicester's hidden history. Then I think we had earlier in the year Thomas Tabanco from Tallow Down. It's just, I don't know if you've seen the trailer.
Yes,
it's going to be the bomb. Yeah, it's going to be so. I mean, Thomas's work, I just think that people are really, really going to enjoy that performance. From the music to the movement, I think it's going to be fantastic. So I don't know. There's actually too much to choose from. I've been spouting on about Fanon all year. I went to a conference in Lisbon called Afro-Europeans, and I think they all think Fanon's a god. I'm working with the BHM Live with a young artist who's got a piece called Oreo, and so I've given him Fanon to go and read. And so they're just. Oh gosh, and I have to mention Paris, who's a musician within one of the BHM Live event. Beautiful musician, young lady that I met this week when we were working through that. So I don't know, you need to come to it all. It's absolutely brilliant. And every year the programme is just getting bigger. It is. I know. It's a brilliant programme, and I think because it's not just serendipity, it's other people who pull the Black History Month programme together. So it's a shout out to everybody who's in the BHM brochure. But what they need to turn around and say to themselves in terms of the programme and the effort that they put on, it is, as far as I'm concerned, because of the contribution from everyone else within the city as well, the best Black History Month programme in the country. It's huge.
It is huge.
It really is huge. It's well respected. It's well attended. And every year people are interested and wanting to contribute more and wanting to do more. And as I say, that's not just serendipity. I have to acknowledge all the other people who recognise the importance of it and work really hard and contribute to the programme.
Yeah, brilliant. And for organisations then who might want to celebrate Black History Month, what are your top 3 tips for doing this in the best way? And again, I know it won't be one size fits all, but what are your top 3 tips?
I think if you've never experienced or never gone to a Black History Month thing before, then I'm just going to say, as tasters to go to, find a film. Yep. They're at Phoenix, so one of the films will be to your taste and your liking. Find a live arts performance. If you're not used to live arts performances, BHM Live, because it's got shorter sound bites of work. And come to a discussion or an exhibition, so you have a taste at different levels to start to frame a picture. So you can frame a picture that way rather than just come to one type of event. And what will happen you'll then also meet a range of different people.
To then think about how you might shape it in your organisation, whether it's public sector, private sector, corporate sector. Perfect, thank you. And if people want to know more about your work and what you do, how should they contact you? And I just want to say I'm really honoured to be one of the sponsors. So Diverse Minds is sponsoring Serendipity's, part of Serendipity's Black History Month events. So if anyone wants to get involved and do what I've done, what's the best way to contact you?
Then we've got our website, which is www.serendipity-uk.com, or you can find us, we're based at Montford University at the moment, but yes, on our website is the easiest point to get hold of us.
And all that information and the BHM programme will be part of the show notes, so you won't miss out and you can absolutely access them. So thank you so much, Pawlet. That's been incredible, it's been insightful, and thank you for distilling your amazing amount of knowledge and experience with us today on the Diverse Minds podcast.
Oh, thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks for listening to the Diverse Minds podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you access your podcasts from. You can also connect with me on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Tune into next week's episode of the podcast, where I'll bring you more insights on mental health and inclusion. Bye for now.